Okay, this is part 2 of my basic Windows 7 rant. I'm going to basically go through your checklist of what to do in buying your Windows 7 machine and how to change the default settings so that it works like like you expect Windows to, instead of this, oh, we've done it new, that Microsoft seems to have adopted. Out of the box, here's Windows 7. Now, nice, pretty, clean desktop. It won't stay that way long. And if you want to know what a desktop winds up looking like, here's my machine. It doesn't take long for a machine to get started. But the reason I don't mind this is because I personally don't spend a lick of time looking at my desktop. What I wind up using this functionality. So, yeah. Here we are, Windows 7. Ooh, pretty. Right off the bat, what's most apparent is your taskbar now looks very much like a KDE Linux bar. Now, it's not exactly like a KDE bar. It does have some useful functionality like preview, but as I said in the other video, in exchange you lose the quick launch. That being said, let's ignore that. The very first thing you should do the moment you connect your Windows 7 machine to the internet, no matter what version of Windows 7 you have, is go to Microsoft.com/Security Essentials and download the Security Essentials and install it. The reason I recommend doing this is not because the Microsoft Security Essentials is better, but because it works best for Windows because it is made by Microsoft. It will scan areas of the computer that other antiviruses will, and it won't make mistakes that other antiviruses will, solely because of the source code of Windows, which only Microsoft has access to. There's parts of Windows that other things don't quite know what to do with because Microsoft doesn't tell them. So, because it's free and because it will work best for Windows 7, you should download it. Item number 2 is optional depending on which version of Windows 7 you have, but if you have Pro or Ultimate, you should go to Microsoft.com/Windows/virtualpc-download.aspx and get the Windows XP mode, which is basically Windows XP Service Pack 3 running in a virtual machine linked to all your drives and so forth. This is very, very useful if you have any legacy software, and odds are a lot of third-party free applications you're going to find online are going to run better in XP than they do in Windows 7 or Vista, either because development stopped a long time ago or whatever. This is worth having if you do anything other than the most basic computing. I don't know many businesses that are going to be able to function without XP mode. Why you have to go through so many hoops and by default it doesn't show up in the search is anybody's guess. Probably because Microsoft desperately wants XP to die. Item number 3 you should do. Come into Explorer, and while you still can, click Options, Layout, and check the menu bar, so that you have the menu bar that Microsoft seems to want to kill back. In Internet Explorer, come up to the top, right-click, to say menu bar. Now, my honest suggestion to you is that you should be using Firefox. So, from here on they're optional, but I suggest downloading Firefox because it is still more secure than IE, and IE 8 does not give a good web browsing experience. It still gets a lot of weird errors. You will enjoy the internet more if you download Firefox. Or, if you prefer Opera or, I can't remember, or Chrome. Basically all of them work better than IE 8 right now. Same thing Though this is your preference, do you prefer Outlook or Thunderbird? I personally prefer Thunderbird, so I suggest putting it on. I should also point out, and that's sort of the basic things you need to do. If you feel so inclined, I suggest the next thing you do after configuring your Windows machine to work like it should is write Microsoft an angry hate mail email going, why haven't you turned the menu bar off? I thought Windows 7 was going to be all the Bugs Vista fixed. And the reason I suggest you do that is because I know it's not much of an inconvenience to go and turn it back on and say, Microsoft, what are you thinking? But I honestly think if you don't complain to Microsoft, they're just going to get rid of it altogether, as evident by the direction Paint and WordPad and all the other Microsoft applications are taking. It's literally, Windows has gotten it in its head that you don't need a menu bar anymore, and that's a real mistake that you need to make clear to them. Or you can just switch OSs altogether and let them send Windows to hell. And I don't switch to OS X, switch to Linux, because Apples are not worth the extra money they cost. The other thing, and there's not going to be enough time to go into it in full detail in this video because I've only got about 3 minutes left, but I'm going to touch on it now, and I'm not going to make the video today. I'm going to make it later this week, possibly next weekend. In Windows 7, something has been introduced called home groups. It adds whole new levels of security to Windows networking, which is a good thing. The bad thing about home groups is it doesn't obey or follow directions. If you are in an environment where you have on your network non-Windows 7 computers, this includes Windows Vista, Windows XP, any Linux operating system, any Macintosh or Apple operating system, home groups will interfere with your network. It will screw up networked printers, networked files, and various work groups. Linux machines can bypass this if they bypass the Windows altogether and create their own separate, if you don't use Samba Share or anything like that. The same thing with Macs, but they won't work well together with Windows machines anymore because of the way Windows 7 hijacks the network with home groups. This is because part of the security of home groups is enabling a username and password for the default network. While I appreciate the A for effort, the people who need this level of security already have it set up. The average home user doesn't really need this level of security, and we should all be behind a second router not made or provided by our DSL provider, such as Linksys or D-Link or somebody that secures, which means in our home, odds are the people who are there are trusted. Your network should be encrypted, there should be a passkey, and that's sufficient. And because home groups interferes, well, here's how it interferes. What'll happen is, if the other machines turn on, they'll set up a work group that doesn't have a username and password, and they'll be communicating to each other. And then when the Windows 7 machine gets turned on, or when one of those gets turned off, basically it hijacks the network, and it either, it implements its own settings, and basically nobody else can get through. It screws the whole thing up is what it does. And how to turn it off and fix it is too complicated to cover. As you see, it took me 3 minutes just to explain what the problem is. So, ciao y'all, and I'll cover that in a future video.